Before we start, there is a new video on Moistky Live. I also will be streaming on that channel at 9:30 PM GMT, a Prime Minister's Questions Response. Before that, I'll be streaming on Twitch, all of which are linked down below. Today I want to talk about something in the United Kingdom that's about to take place. Something which actually, to an extent, I find a bit odd. When it comes to the subject of DV, in England and Wales, offenders of that particular crime would face, or could face, a compulsory lie detector test when released from Her Majesty's pleasure under proposed new laws. Those deemed a high risk of re-offending would be given regular polygraph tests to find out if they have breached release conditions. Has anyone started rolling their eyes yet? Yeah, me too. I'm a tad confused by this. Perhaps this should be a Halls of Injustice video on its own. To be clear, it's not. I've got something for Friday that equally amuses me, and we'll get to why it's so amusing in a moment. The subject of today, Friday's one, will have to wait. There is a long-awaited DV bill that specifies controlling a victim's finances can count as a form of, well, DV. Which is quite interesting to me because I know a lot of couples who do that. One person who basically spies on the other person's expenses because reasons. And those reasons are usually arbitrary and a bit invasive. The alleged abusers will also be banned from cross-examining victims in court, which I'm a bit confused by. One must always face the accused, or the accuser, and when in a courtroom setting, it is down to the judge's judgment whether or not the questions can be considered misleading or not, or even coercive. Granted, I generally think this should be done by legal officials and not by the accused, but they should at least be present. I know there are some people who are trying to remove that from the situation by using satellite links depending on the nature of the crime they are accused of. Let's quickly talk about the lie detector test, the polygraph. A test so good Veritaserum has nothing on it. A polygraph, by the way, is way more accurate than any information I've ever given after having a tooth extracted by a air quotes specialist. It was 1 molar and I swear I gave the man national secrets. So the way the lie detector test works, for those who don't know how a polygraph is implemented, it measures changes in heart rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate and sweat. Key factor here, which is something even the Home Office, who are still trying to push this, agree upon, while they have used it to monitor high-risk SEX offenders, they are only 89% accurate according to their own information and statistics. In truth, that's a lot higher than I expected, but it does create a problem, and it is a huge problem. It is the idea that they are accurate and therefore we must use it as valuable, valid, or legitimate information. They are not. In a courtroom, they are not used because of how inaccurate they are. If it was 99.9999 to infinity%, it would still not be good enough. It would have to be 100. It has to be. Anything else is false, and therefore not valid. And the fact that this is being proposed is a damning statement for how desperate some are to lock up because they might have enough information but they don't. Because somebody gives off a little anxiety and it shows guilt. That's a key factor here. One has to take into account all mitigating factors of that individual. Can you use a lie detector accurately on somebody that, for example, has anxiety? No is the answer, because they'll be panicking from the offset. Even when telling the truth or lying, you'll be able to barely tell whether or not they're telling the truth or telling a lie. I know somebody in the comments is going to be very helpful about this. Thank you. I do appreciate any assistance when it comes to fully understanding the polygraph. I will stand by my words. It is not, nor should it ever be used, as a way of ascertaining guilt or fact. If the domestic abuse bill passes, a 3-year pilot will be carried out on the abusers which are deemed at high risk of causing serious harm. If this is then successful, the scheme will be rolled out nationwide. I feel like I need to bring back the suit for this to be applicable, for my skepticism to be on show. Best I could do is quickly put the Skeptic clone mug that I don't actually own on the screen. Gorgeous. Back to me though, I'm arguably better looking. Around 300 offenders will take a lie detector test 3 months after their release and every 6 months after that. Those who fail the test will not be returned to prison, but they may be jailed if they refuse to take the test or attempt to trick it. Now, there are ways of tricking it. The most notable is simply daydreaming while telling a lie. Others would include when it comes to probable lie questions. So, for example, if you're asked, have you ever stolen money, or have you ever lied to your parents, or have you ever cheated on a test? Those type of questions are used as a way of ascertaining whether someone is lying or not, as a establishing the reaction, which is quite common. Simply find a way to trick that, i.e. the daydreaming, and you're laughing. By the way, that comes from an NSA whistleblower. I'll link the article down below if you're at all interested. It does come from 2012. I don't know if lie detectors have made any advancements since then, because the only time I ever saw them was when I had a mistake of turning on ITV and Jeremy Kyle was on and they used them for everything. Yes, everything. Information gathered from failed lie detector tests is routinely shared with law enforcement, who will then use it to carry out further investigations. Understandably, campaigners have said there are nearly 2 million victims of DV in the UK, 2/3 of whom are women, so this is a step in the right direction, not realising that this is not a step in the right direction in the slightest. The Conservatives in 2017 proposed tougher measures in their election manifesto, but because they never held a strong enough majority in Parliament, which I think is baffling on this subject especially, progress legislating it has been slow. Obviously not helped by the odd MP or two who, whenever this got brought up, intervened and caused it to be delayed even further for more reading to take place. Yes, I remember the upskirting debacle. This particular bill is among several proposed laws which fell by the wayside last autumn when Boris Johnson prorogued Parliament, and then obviously after that, again when the MPs subsequently voted for an early general election. Since the government is putting this up there as a priority, and with them holding such a majority, and surely most MPs, if not all, would support this because whammon anyway, this will go through. It should anyway, because whammon, and not because it's actually nonsense. Not the DV part, the lie detector part. That part undermines all of it. Now, as far as the banning of perpetrators cross-examining their victims during family court proceedings and legal duty, which will then be placed on councils to find safe accommodation for DV victims and their children, charities, including Women's Aid, believe this is a life-saving move, but only if it was accompanied by guaranteed funding for specialist women's services, including marginalised groups in society, which it estimates cost about £173 million a year. 2/3 of victims are female, everyone. Let's just forget the guys exist in that one. That's quite, irritating. The bill risks dividing victims into haves and have-nots, which is something that is quoted from Bernardo's chief executive Javed Khan, continuing by saying that children are the hidden victims of DV, suffering trauma that can last a lifetime, and that he is disappointed that while the DV bill may improve access to refuges, it will not help the majority of victims and children who remain in the family home. The Home Office has said the UK's new DV Commissioner, Nicole Jacobs, would consider what support the government can provide children who have been affected by this. There is also a proposition that the court protection orders may ban perpetrators from contacting a victim or forcing them to take part in alcohol or drug treatment programs, which I find to be quite interesting as well, actually. Now, these measures will only impact England and Wales, but it will create a specific criminal offence in Northern Ireland of controlling of coercive behaviour, which is already on the statute book in the rest of the UK, along with provisions to apply to court proceedings in Northern Ireland and Scotland. The lie detector part still irks me. I'm going to keep saying it because it bugs me to no end. It's not accurate. You've recognised it as not accurate, yet you're still going with it. That's embarrassing. Oh well. It'll be interesting to see how the debates take place and if anyone will actually mention this. But we'll see. With it, I'm very much interested to know what you think. So please do let me know in the comments down below. If I don't see you on Twitch tonight or over on Moistly Live, I hope you have a fantastic Wednesday. And thank you all for listening.